Hello, my name is Mignon Tidwell,
My name is Casey Constantio.
and this is our project on the complexities of child abuse and filicide and how to combat it. Now, you may be wondering, what is the definition of filicide? According to Wikipedia, it is the deliberate act of a parent killing their own child. A study done in 2005 shows that of children under the age of 5 in the United States who were murdered, 61% were killed by their own parents. In recent years, another study states that around 1,800 children died at the hands of their parents in the United States alone. That is about 5 kids daily murdered from the people who are expected to love and protect them the most. This issue is important because children are defenseless, vulnerable beings, and their caretakers are obligated by law as well as socially expected to keep them safe. Some of the questions that we'll be answering in this presentation are: where is the line drawn between discipline and abuse? At what point do social workers feel the need to remove the child from an abusive home? What are the causes and effects of child abuse on not only victims, but society as a whole?
Okay, so taking a close look at the history of child rights and protection laws in America is an essential step in understanding all the complexities of child abuse. Early in history, American children were viewed by the courts as property of their families, more specifically their fathers. Fathers were generally allowed to treat their children however they pleased, with no repercussions of their actions. However, this had changed in the early 1870s when the tragic case of an 8-year-old girl named Mary Ellen Wilson had captured many hearts of the nation. Mary Ellen was an orphan that was not only brutally beaten, but also severely neglected by her foster mother, Mary McCormack. Etta Angel Wheeler, one of the concerned neighbors, suspected that the foster mother's treatment of Mary Ellen was unusual, so one day she took it upon herself to check on the family. Afterwards, Wheeler had reported that the child was being abused to the police, but was told that she needed proof of assault. At the time, there were laws that protected children from assault and battery, but none that obtained intervention in the child's home. Wheeler didn't let that stop her as she turned to the attorney and founder of the American Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, Henry Bergh, for help, who eventually succeeded in removing Mary Ellen from her abusive home. Bergh had argued in court that if the law protected animals from abuse, then children should be protected from abuse too. In addition, the foster mother ended up serving 1 year in jail on the count of assault and battery.
This first documented case of abuse resulted in a great shift in the American legal system by the New York Society for Prevention of Cruelty to Children, being founded by Henry Bergh and Elbridge Gerry in 1874. The New York Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children was the first child protective agency in the world and is often seen as having played a key role in the development of children's rights and child protective services in the United States. After the news of the NYSPCC spread in the year 1922, there were around 300 non-governmental societies for the prevention of cruelty to children distributed across America. In the early 20th century, child protection deviated from non-governmental SPCCs to government agencies. In 1912, the first federal agency in the world that focused on bettering the livelihoods of children and families, the Children's Bureau, was created. In 1935, the Social Security Act authorized the Children's Bureau to administer 3 grant-in-aid programs, one of which was the Child Welfare Services Program. In 1962, The Federal Children's Bureau held two meetings to decide what else they could do to help states react to child abuse. And at these meetings, there were attendees that suggested state legislation requiring doctors to report suspected child abuse to the police or child welfare. These meetings were the origin of child abuse reporting laws. The first four were enacted in 1963, and by 1967, every state had reporting laws. The Children's Bureau paid minimal attention to abuse until the 1960s. And in 1973, the U.S. Senator Walter Mondale wrote, "Nowhere in the federal government could we find one official signed full time to the prevention, identification, and treatment of child abuse and neglect." Because of Mondale's great efforts, Congress enacted the Child Abuse Prevention and Treatment Act, also known as CAPTA, a federal law that addresses child abuse and neglect a year later. CAPTA focused on improving reporting and investigation, and also provided funds for regional multidisciplinary centers for child abuse, training and demonstration projects. CAPTA played a major role in shaping the nationwide system of governmental child protective services in the present day.
Since the beginning of time, children have been subjected to many forms of abuse, including physical, sexual, emotional, and neglect. But what does the law consider child abuse here in America? There are federal laws that are considered the outline of definitions of child maltreatment. Ultimately, the definition of child abuse, the way it's reported and investigated, varies from each state. According to federal law, physical abuse is defined as any non-accidental physical injury. California law states serious physical harm does not include reasonable and age-appropriate spanking to the buttocks where there is no evidence of serious physical injury. On the other hand, Oklahoma states parents, teachers, and other persons can use ordinary force as a means of discipline, including but not limited to spanking, switching, and paddling. Many people would consider the line between child abuse and discipline to be blurred, as it is a widely debated topic amongst researchers and the public alike.
In the US, studies show that approximately 65% of adults approve of physical punishment, and around 50% of families use physical punishment to discipline children. Overall, a parent or guardian has the right to discipline their child. However, there is a limit to the amount of force a parent can inflict without involving the Child Protective Services, or CPS. You may be wondering when CPS social workers intervene and how the system works.
The child welfare system is a group of services designed to promote children's well-being by ensuring safety and strengthening families to properly care for their children. Child welfare agencies don't intervene in the cases of harm caused by acquaintances or strangers, as those cases are the responsibility of the law enforcement. Child welfare systems are complex and the procedures may vary by state. Nonetheless, the typical procedures child welfare agencies perform include investigating reports of potential child maltreatment, arranging for children to live with foster families when they aren't safe at home, and providing services to families who need help in the care or protection of their children.
A report of child abuse or neglect can be made by any concerned person though most of the reports come from people mandated by state law, such as teachers and nurses, to report suspicions of child maltreatment. These reports of possible child maltreatment are received by the CPS and are either screened in or screened out. Reports that are screened in have enough information to warrant an investigation. Reports that are screened out don't have enough information, or the information that was reported doesn't meet the state's legal definition of neglect or abuse. At the end of an investigation, cases can be substantiated, which is an occurrence of child abuse or neglect, depending on state law, is, is believed to have happened, or unsubstantiated. There is an inadequate evidence for the CPS worker to conclude that an occurrence of child abuse happened, or the occurrence doesn't meet the legal definition of child maltreatment. When there is a legal determination that neglect or abuse has happened, juvenile dependency court may require the family to participate in in-home CPS services if it is determined that the child can remain safe at home. But if the child had been severely harmed prior or at or at high risk of being severely harmed, it is up to the court to remove the child from the home and place them with a relative or in foster care. People who are guilty of abusing or neglecting a child may be offered support and treatment services or are required by a juvenile dependency court to participate in services that will help keep their children safe. In more severe cases or fatalities, police are called upon to investigate and may file charges in criminal court against the perpetrators of child maltreatment.
One of the severe cases of abuse had shaken the world in 2013 when an 8-year-old boy, Gabriel Fernandez, naked body was found dead at his home in Palmdale, California. It had been reported that he had a cracked skull, shattered ribs, severe burns, and BB pellets inside of his skin. His mother, Pearl Fernandez, and her boyfriend is Zar. I, I can't really say his name. Aguirre had brutally beat him when he didn't clean up his toys. The Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office states Gabriel was frequently beaten by Aguirre because he believed the boy was gay in a press release. On May 23, 2013, Pearl Fernandez and Aguirre were both arrested. Fernandez was arrested for felony child endangerment while Aguirre was arrested for attempted murder, but after Gabriel died, they were both charged with first-degree murder. Fernandez had pleaded guilty on February 15, 2018, as a part of her plea deal in order to avoid the death penalty. To contrast, Aguirre was sentenced to the death penalty after he pleaded guilty. When Gabriel was still alive, he showed his injuries and told that he was being abused to other family members, a security guard, and a teacher, of all whom reported it to social services. Yet, after 60 complaints were filed against Pearl Fernandez and Aguirre to the Los Angeles County Department of Children and Family Services, no social workers had come to Gabriel's rescue. The social workers, supervisors, and sheriff deputies only received a mere slap on the wrist for their neglect to protect Gabriel Fernandez.
In severe cases such as Gabriel Fernandez's, you may wonder what causes caretakers to harm their child so severely. According to research, there are numerous risk factors or attributes commonly associated with child maltreatment. Children within families and environments in which these factors exist have a higher probability of experiencing maltreatment. But of course, that's not always the case. For example, several researchers note the relation between poverty and maltreatment. Yet, it must be noted that most people living in poverty do not harm their children. Risk factors associated with child maltreatment can be grouped into four domains, which are parent or caregiver factors, family factors, child factors, and environmental factors. Available research suggests that different factors may play varying roles in accounting for different forms of child maltreatment. Parent or caregiver factors potentially contributing to maltreatment relate to personality characteristics and psychological well-being, history of maltreatment, substance abuse, knowledge, and age. About one-third of all individuals who were maltreated will subject their children to maltreatment. Children who either experience maltreatment or witness violence between their parents or caregivers may learn violent behavior and may also learn to justify violent behavior as appropriate. Specific life situations of some families, such as marital conflict, domestic violence, single parenthood, unemployment, financial stress, and social isolation, may increase the likelihood of maltreatment. Children living with single parents may be at higher risk of experiencing physical and sexual abuse and neglect than children living with two biological parents. Children are not responsible for being victims of maltreatment, of course, but certain factors, such as disabilities, age, and behavioral problems, however, can make some children more vulnerable to maltreating behavior. And environmental factors include poverty and unemployment, social isolation, and community characteristics. The NIS 3 study, for example, found that children from families with annual incomes below 15,000 in 1993 were more than 22 times more likely to be harmed by child abuse and neglect as compared to children from families with annual incomes above 30,000. Commonly associated effects of child maltreatment can be split up into three categories: health and physical effects, intellectual and cognitive development, and emotional and behavioral consequences. Childhood maltreatment has been linked to higher risk for diabetes, high blood pressure, brain damage, and etc. The psychological effects on victims include poor mental and emotional health, attachment disorders, social difficulties, and post traumatic stress disorder, also known as PTSD. Studies have shown that adults with a history of adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs, had a higher prevalence of suicide attempts than those who didn't. ACEs refers to a group of traumatic experiences in childhood, including maltreatment, that can affect an individual's physical, psychological, and behavioral well being. Several studies have documented the correlation between child maltreatment and future juvenile delinquency and criminal activities. But the consequences of child abuse doesn't only affect the victim, but studies show that it hurts society as a whole as well. According to 2015 data in the US, the cost of non-fatal incidents of child maltreatment estimated to be about 831,000 per child, and for fatal incidents of child maltreatment, it estimated 16.6 million per child. In this study, the costs include both tangible costs, which is child welfare, healthcare, and juvenile justice, and intangible costs, which is pain, suffering, grief. So, what can we do as individuals in our communities and the government as well to prevent child maltreatment?
One of the solutions to preventing child abuse and filicide is by communities ensuring that public and private agencies have the necessary tools such as evidence-informed interventions, assessments, and properly trained staff properly trained staff to give children and their families timely, appropriate care to prevent child maltreatment. Also, communities can raise awareness by becoming advocates of change, by contacting lawmakers and politicians. One can bring attention to the needs of children who are victims of abuse. If more people band together to bring awareness to this topic, new laws can be introduced and information can be shared amongst the general public. Another solution that the government can actually try is to reform the child welfare system. They have regulations and rules that the social workers must follow, but what if we took it to a higher extent? For example, some social workers come in and do a home evaluation. I believe that they should do more than just check around the house to make sure it looks safe. I think that some should have the right to look in cabinets, drawers, under beds, and more. There's so many other things that parents could be hiding. They should also do home inspections at every visit. One big thing we also agreed on was mandatory drug testing at every visit, whether it's a planned visit or an emergency visit. A lot of times social workers only drug test when it seems when it seems that the parent is under the influence or someone reports it as such. A lot of times you can't even tell when a person is intoxicated. When an unexpected drug test With an unexpected drug test, you are more likely to catch unfit parents. Making changes to the regulations will help more children get out of unsafe environments.
The research that I have done in preparation for this project has made me look at the child welfare system very differently. As I learned prior to researching the Gabriel Fernandez case, the child welfare system interventions, or lack thereof, can cause further harm to children, families, and society as a whole.
This research this research has shown me how many things go unseen in the system and in children's homes. The research that I did had me searching up other cases and investigations of child abuse that went on. The way that this research changed my views made me more open to addressing issues that happen like this. I know it's a heavy topic and could be triggering to some, but I believe that it's something that needs to be addressed more often.
Thank you for listening. This was Mignon Tidwell and Casey Constancio. Oh shoot, I pronounced your name wrong. Sorry.
No, no, you said it right. You said it right. You're fine.
Okay.
If you guys have any questions, just put them in the chat. Thank you.